Hello, everyone. My name's Jordan Smith, and today we are doing the seventh episode of Evolving the Moon through the Houses and the Signs. And today I am joined with all of my lovely colleagues and friends from EA. Today we have David Green.
Hello.
Hello. We have Rob Shahal,
Jordan.
Kristen Fontana, and Joe Malloy.
Hi, everyone.
And then we have Sue Hilliard, as always, working the back end for us like a champ. So, today we're talking about the moon and Libra, or the seventh house, and how we can evolve it and nurture it, what some of the pitfalls or some of the vulnerable places someone with a moon in Libra or the seventh house might experience. So, I want to get all of y'all's take. What's your favorite thing about a Libra moon, or the thing that stands out the most to start us off?
Something jumped into my head just as I was listening to you, Jordan. And I thought, now I know why it makes sense, why there's like a little something. And I'm going to show my age. But the first line of one of the most beautiful songs I remember starts with these words, when the moon is in the seventh house. Yeah, you remember. And Jupiter aligns with Mars. It goes back the age of Aquarius. So there's always been something for me in the background about the moon is magnificent and has an impact wherever it is, but there is something about the moon's presence in the seventh house or Libra that I guess has always connected me with the moon, with people, relationships, things like this.
I love that. Kristen, what do you feel about a moon?
Well, honestly, I want to ask you. You have a 29-degree Libra moon. I am putting you on the spot. I want to know, what do you love most about having a moon in Libra at 29? I already know what it is that you're wrapping up in this life, but I want to know, what do you love about that placement?
I think for me, ever since I was little, I really have been rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. It's something that was really hardwired into me. And I like sharing through conversation with people, but I also like playing the role of being an active listener. One of the things that I say to some of my closest girlfriends in the beginning, because I love a good, you know, a conversation of tennis ball, conversational tennis ball. But whenever I have, a friend who is in need of a listening ear, I always start the conversation after they call me with, do you need me to listen, or do you want me to give my opinion? And if it's just, I want to listen, I need you to listen, I just hold space for them. And I think that that's something really important, probably that I've been cultivating for a long time because it's at 29 degrees. It's probably something I've had to work on. Um, but it's that. And then also, I think a Libra moon can see, and this might be my Taurus stuff too, but like, you know, I like things that are, like these slides, I like things that are aesthetically pleasing to the eye, or that can evoke something in you where you can connect with it. And it's another way to share. And I find a lot of times people with strong Libra can sometimes be in the arts, especially if they have like a twist of Pisces or something too. So there's that. And then I would also say that whenever it comes to my kids, because Moon and Libra for me is, I really get a lot out of watching them cultivate how to give and how to receive as well. Like that's something that really nurtures me, by seeing that develop within my kids. And what I found is, I had my stepdad, he was very Libran, and he really helped me be a good parent. And it was just through watching him, how he would give and how he would nurture as a grandparent. And that really, facilitated that process for me as well. And so even just watching people who have that in their chart, when they're doing it naturally, not like I'm giving and I'm giving and I'm giving, but when they're able to do it, and it's selfless, I feel like it's really, really a beautiful, strong trait of that moon placement. So, yeah.
I love how Libra moon energy knows how to bring people together, right? All
Yeah.
the Libra people I know, the Libra sun, but also Libra moons, they stay connected and they make sure people aren't left out, and they just love that coming together with others, that social element, but also just the love, that is within them to that allows those connections to be sustained. The people that I know in my life, in my family, are very much like that. It's all about bringing people together and what's the meal? What's the meal going to be? Like
Yeah.
where's the setting? And really again, wanting it to be a really beautiful experience for people. So I appreciate that attention to the aesthetics. You're right, and attention to just bringing people together in a space that you know can be remembered. I love that about Libra and
Yeah,
nurtured.
I'm gonna add to that, Kristen. In Jordan, you've probably experienced this. It's where the Libra moon energy is very much about finding emotional balance, right? When to give and when to receive. And it's always they'll be striving for that. So, I've heard the saying that Libra is all about balance, and my take is they're actually striving for balance. Because there's going to be moments where you're going to give, you know, and there's going to be moments where you have to step back and receive. And it's knowing when it's right to give and when it's right to receive. And I've seen this with yourself, being that Libra moon. You are very much a people person and you like to bring people together. But you've had experiences where you've had to like step back and be like, no,
Yeah.
boundaries. That's that square that we have to Capricorn. So it's about listening not only to others but yourself. It's that projection that ends up happening with that Libra energy with yourself and others, that mirror of relationship dynamics that take place.
Hmm.
So that's with the Libra energies that I've experienced. I would say those energies play out in that kind of way.
Yeah. Deva.
I find one of my favorite things about a moon in Libra is the ability to put themselves in another person's shoes. Even if they wouldn't particularly feel that way, it's that I have found that there's an ability to really put themselves inside another person's shoes, so to speak, and to give from there. So it's like a way of keeping balance with themselves and others, out of being able to emotionally feel the other person's side, or to be able again to put themselves in another person's shoes. I found that that's been very valuable because it helps create a natural harmony between oneself and others, and to be able to give then when appropriate to what that other person would then need, instead of I find at times it's not always clear in terms of we might be expecting something different than another person would want or that another person would need, and part of that Libra archetype is being able to feel into uh, the the role of another person and being able to give accordingly. So I found that to be very helpful in terms of, as you were saying, Rav, keeping that balance between oneself and others, and to be able to hold balance instead of going to those extremes.
Yeah.
Deva, I absolutely love that you brought this up because I mean, personally, I've experienced that, and that has been the thing that sharpened my discernment around how to give to others is I mean, I'm someone like I can even put myself in like animals' shoes, you know, like I see something happen and I just cry. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, it like rocks me because there's that natural inconjunct to Pisces. So there can be this an immense amount of empathy and compassion. And it sharpens your discernment around this dynamic, as you said, like with keeping the balance, because for me personally, I can say I've experienced trials and tribulations in life where I realized that another person isn't able to hear where I'm coming from, even if I'm able to hear where they're coming from and putting myself in their shoes, or if it's harder for them to have more of that empathy. And so what it does is for me, it's cultivated um, a dynamic of knowing or sharpening the ability to know if something's going to be based in equity or not, you know, over time. Like, I mean, someone can learn those things, you know, but if it's something that keeps happening, it does. It's like it teaches you that lesson within Libra of not going from this extreme to the other extreme, right? Like just giving and giving and giving and giving, right? So I love that you brought that up. Thank you. All right, does anyone have anything else to add? Or do we want to move on? All right, so let's go to, yeah, thank you. All right, so this is where we talk about what strengths and vulnerabilities, what nurtures and empowers. And if one of you guys want to start off, I know that we kind of talked about extremes. I can give a couple of examples of my own in a minute, but I do want to let you guys go first. But if there's something you guys want to talk about dealing with the vulnerabilities and the cardinal archetype linking to this sign.
Well, I can start us off because I think I kind of touched upon it in terms of the square that you have to Capricorn, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the boundaries of, when you're in a relationship with somebody and, you care about this person, it can be, a romantic relationship or friends, etc. It's knowing when you need to stop for them to empower themselves, right? And there's that polarity to Aries. So I think that's both a strength and a vulnerability, being able to know when is, Deva mentions this in her book, an act of supreme giving is being able to say no, enough's enough, right? I've got to let the other person empower themselves. And so I think that's that cardinal energy of Capricorn and Aries coming in. And that Cancer archetype then links in when you're kind of empowering the person to become secure within themselves. So that's how I see that play out with that whole Libra energy when it comes to relating in general.
Yes, I would agree. Um, I would also say that it's really where someone can be learning, going back to everything we've already said, helping someone who's helping themselves. Something that I have experienced an immense amount in my life is really trying to break free of codependencies or deep enmeshments, especially it can be within the family system. You could be conditioned around this. That's that link to Capricorn. And then that feels really secure, and that's linking to that, Cancerian dynamic. But it's also where that's where your value is coming from, is what you can do for someone else instead of really empowering yourself. So that can be a vulnerability. But whenever you start to, or I'm going to speak from my own personal experience, whenever that finally gets confronted, it is where when I've been in relationships, really having to observe over time, different friends, I would say, especially in my 20s and 30s, like, are they coming to me as someone to fix a problem or to give them the advice. And what I tend to do now is, you know you better than anyone else, and you need to listen to yourself, because it can be with a Libra moon, a vulnerability can be taking on the voices and the expectations of others and really not having a personal voice of authority. And so that's something that can really need to be cultivated. And it also becomes a nurturing quality about a Libra moon whenever you know that you're actually empowering someone to blaze their own path, to not just be the all-knowing counselor. That's the role that I played a lot with my friendships growing up, but to really just have them ask and answer their questions. I was tutoring someone the other day, and that's what I did, is I was just like, hey, because he didn't understand something, and I just asked him questions, and all of a sudden he answered it for himself and it came on. Now I could have gotten all my value out of just telling him this, but there's can be this dynamic of really wanting to have, like I said, equity within relationships, and really having to learn through hearing someone, you know, what it is that they're actually needing. Are they needing to empower themselves? Are they depending on other people too much? And also, a Libra moon, it can feel really good to always be that person who's in that place, you know? And so it's really having to understand that that's not necessarily where one's value comes from. It's coming from within themselves, you know, and that can also mitigate a lot of dynamics later on. In my personal experience of where this is just where I'm at, um, the only thing that I care about having a strong dependency on besides myself is my relationship to God, period. That's it. Everything that I need is going to come from that. And that's been a very big lesson for me in this lifetime. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's a that's it. That's the in conjunct to Pisces house, the Pisces house, right? I think that one of the most challenging things for the Libra moon is like you said, the enmeshment piece, the attachment, expectations, attachment to what someone does with your giving or someone's giving. And all of this does depend on someone's stage of evolution. You're at 29 Libra, so what you're doing in this life, Jordan, may be very different than somebody else with that energy. But the most challenging thing that I've seen with the people I've worked with is just this tendency to attract people into their life all of the time, partners primarily that need something from them, right? So there's this attracting people they can help, attracting people that are nowhere near where they are on the evolutionary wheel. And it feels good to give. It feels great to give. But when you're giving, you're not then getting your needs met. And also what I've seen too, because the Libra moon soul is so much a natural giver and wanting to help those in their midst, there's with the square to Cancer and the square to Capricorn, there's not a focus on their own inner relationship to themselves because they're constantly fixing other people. And so through the square, it can keep them in even a rested emotional place for those that aren't doing the deep inner work, for those who are not, really taking the deep dive. And that can happen at different stages of their life because they're thrown back on themselves. Like you can look back in your life, Jordan, at certain key points in your life.
yeah.
You were thrown back on yourself, feeling totally alone, Cancer, totally alone, because no one had any clue who you were. Because you're extending your hand down the mountain, square to Capricorn. You're extending your hand down the mountain to help somebody. So nobody can even see for a second what you need. And it creates this inner aloneness that, is it can only be nurtured and fed by yourself. And yes, your relationship to God. But that's the deep ache there for sure. That's the turning point for a Libra moon.
I absolutely agree. And as you know, because, and a few of you on here, because we're friends, I've definitely experienced that for sure. And I've seen that with other people. I have some family members who have a lot of Libran dynamics, and one of them is ending is nearing the end of his life, and he is finally just like, I'm done giving. I've given my whole life. I can't do it anymore, you know? And so it can also be that different evolutionary stage, but it's like, I'm glad that at the end of his life, he is actually choosing himself in this type of a way. You know what I'm saying? To reflect, because that's what ends up happening with that square is it makes you reflect whenever it's the square to Capricorn.
Yeah.
David, Joe, do you guys have anything to add?
David, do you want to go?
Was there anything you wanted to say, Joe? Of course, jump on in.
Yeah.
There's the Libra dynamic. Sorry, guys. There's the Libra.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah. I mean, you said that. I thought, oh yeah, you know, here's me, and I know in a different world, a different community, a different group of people. I know everything, and here I feel like, you know, even after studying this work for some years, it's just beginning. So I thought, well, yeah, I got a little bit I can give. I just really was listening and kind of drinking in what you were saying, and I thought, because I have a lot of Cancer energy in my chart, and I resonate with the moon and how it speaks to me about emotional security, and so I think moon in Libra, whether it's a natal moon or we've got the moon coming into Libra now, haven't we, for the full moon this weekend, creates an opportunity for everyone. But whether your moon, wherever your moon is, you know, when the moon transits through Libra, we all have this opportunity. And opportunities can feel like crisis because we experience them as challenges. And from the ground level, an ordinary Joe, yep, in a house, meeting people, go to the shops. These are my day-to-day things, and that's how I relate to the crises that happened. It stops me getting where I want to go, stops me doing what I'm doing. All these people are either helping me or they're in my way. The Libra moon, I think, gives us an opportunity to step out of where we're caught in the protective individuality that can be created, particularly for me, thinking of like my Cancerian sort of soul, in a way, not the Cancerian soul, but the kind of picture that I have in my chart. And so the moon in Libra, for me, for anyone, triggers this opportunity. It allows us to grow by helping us understand and see and experience what's happening in these dynamic relationships with other people. And of course, we will attract people who show us what we need to see. Other people are always the best mirrors. If you want to know more about yourself, get in a relationship with someone else. And I think Libra, whether it's about balance or giving, receiving, interaction, however we look at it, Libra really helps us to understand the value in being in relationship with people in the world around us. And I think that's kind of what it says to me. That's what I'm with at the moment.
I love that, Joe.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was really sweet.
Yeah, I mean, just digesting and taking in everything you guys have shared. Just to add a little bit, what comes to mind, uh, the Libra moon can have difficulty when there's conflict or when there's disagreement in the environment or within relationships, and it's like there's always a need to try and to fix it, or if things aren't in harmony, to not really be able to emotionally cope with that. It's like always trying to make harmony on the outside, when at times it's best just to let that conflict be. I've spoken with Zoes and myself to where they've made a big step and they've from within themselves made that decision that it's not feeling good to support or to give in a certain way. And then all of a sudden there's this in the environment, big tension. I'm not being accepted. I'm not being approved of, and my decisions aren't, right now I'm not being supported, and it's like I get it really insecure because there's not that harmony or there's not that acceptance or understanding from the other. And from my point of view, seeing that polarity point to the Aries moon, it's saying that's okay. Right now there's not supposed to be harmony. Agree to disagree and to write it out, because that's part of the development of your own voice, and that's part of the development of meeting your own needs outside of any relationship first, to counteract that overgiving. So to let there be disagreement in the environment when there needs to be, and not always trying to fix it from the outside, or to have that be a source of finding your own voice when there's an insecurity that way, so that there can be more of a sense of, okay, right now there's tension, or right now there's conflict, and that's okay. I'm just going to let it be that way.
That's hard for them.
Yeah.
It can be
Oh,
so challenging.
it can be. I would be remiss if I do not bring this up about a Libra moon. There can be an immensely strong need for justice. And we've got to remember that Aries is the counterpoint of Libra. And when there is an injustice or there is inequity, there can be a lot of anger that can come. Like, you can be around. I remember in high school, there were like a group of guys who called me like Mrs. Nice Girl or something, Miss Nice Girl. And I was like, that's funny because you could piss me off. Like, like it's whenever, and it can be even for other people, right? Whenever you see that happen with other people, there's a strong sense of justice within a Libra moon, I feel like. And that also goes back to even like the codependent dynamic of, you can get in this loop. I've seen this play out with so many clients, experienced it myself that have this. And you touched on it a little bit, Dava, not a little bit, but a lot of it. But like, if you are abandoning yourself, which is a total Libran dynamic where you've been masking who you are and your needs aren't being met, and you keep doing things, and then the person gives you lip service or they just don't do it, eventually there can be this dynamic of an altercation, an argument, and then it kind of creates this cycle all over again of, okay, now I feel like something, I said what I needed to say, and hopefully this is going to work out. And then it just kind of repeats over and over again. I've seen that play out a lot. And Libra moons, you're right, it creates an immense amount of insecurity, and it can be where they just want to fix it right then and there. I've even had partners in my past that were like, I don't want to talk right now though, but I'm like, but just let me fix it. Like, we could talk about this, And I have had to learn how to sit with things and just let it be. And so it can be those extremes playing out in a relationship of I'm giving, all of a sudden I'm really angry. And then, being overly needy, especially if an argument happens and it's like you want to pounce on it, it's like, just talk to me. Like, you're sending the page paragraph, a novel in a text of da 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 da, trying to get it all out, and so yeah, it's just good to let it be. But that is something that I see, and then that strong sense of justice I also see. So, and anger whenever that doesn't happen. Kristen, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, that was really good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. Of course. I mean, I guess, like I said, this does manifest in different ways for different stages of evolution, but sometimes keeping the peace is not what's needed. Like you said, a little bit in the situation, but I think you are definitely not this kind of Libra moon, Jordan, but one of the things that drives me the most crazy, because I do have an Aries moon, is when they can't take a side. Take a side. Take a side for the truth. I mean, you do that, Jordan, in spades, but like that literally makes my Aries moon go bonkers. Have courage to take a side. Have courage to take a stand. Like, like, come on. Because what happens when you're waiting in the in-between and you're on the fence, like, you can't evolve when you're there. You have to take a side. You have to take a risk. It's like, just take it or leave it, or accept the consequences of it. If this is your truth, and stand in it, even if it feels vulnerable. That is my beef with that archetype.
You know what? I have the same beef as well, because I
Oh, good.
know someone in my life who lots of Libra, and absolutely that drives me bonkers.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
Okay, Sue, unless we have anything left to discuss about this, let's move on. All right. So today we are going to be talking about Ariana Grande, and I will give a little background information on her. So she was, let me grab my handy dandy notebook, as the kids say, because I want to make sure that yeah, she was born June 26, 1993 in Boca Raton, Florida. She grew up, by the way, she's first stage individuated, firmly in the first stage individuated is, I think, what everyone agreed upon. That's how I feel as well. Um, But she was born to a mom who is Italian and a father who is Italian and white. Her mom grew up in New York and married her dad. Her mom was like a CEO of a company, for a communication company. And whenever she was around 8 or 10, there's some discrepancies in that. Her parents split. She is extremely close with her paternal grandmother. She identifies as Italian, even though a lot of people mistake her for being, Latina. So growing up, she in Boca Raton, she went to a prep school and got into theater. She had a lot of, you know, different opportunities to sing even whenever she was little. Like she sang at on a cruise ship one time. She sang at a baseball game. And she got into theater and she played some really prominent roles as a child in the child theater. And then whenever she was 14, she really wanted to focus on her singing career and not her acting career, but her big break actually was the Disney Channel show called Victorious, which I watched it. I actually enjoyed it whenever I watched it with my then 8-year-old, who's now 16. But she played the role of Kat Valentine, which is like this ditzy girl, but actually really smart. Um, that's a Libra kind of dynamic already coming out in that character. But the school that she went to, the premise of the show was that it was a performing arts school. So everyone in that school, Victoria, who the show is named after, because it was Victoria Justice, they both were singers. There were other kids who were actors, and that was what the school was based on, was their, abilities to perform and their friendships. She had a spin-off show of that and only lasted 35 episodes. And it was partly because she really wanted to focus on that singing career. And then in 2011, she was signed with Republic Records because whenever she was on the Disney Channel show, she would post YouTube videos of her singing Adele or Mariah Carey or, people who had great vocal range, so she could show her vocal range. And a friend of the CEO of Republic, he saw her video, he gave it to the CEO, and they signed her. And in 2013, she had her debut album, Yours Truly. And then from 2013 to 2017, she became one of the most streamed artists in the world, especially a female artist. She broke lots of records. She was the first female to ever have 3 spots on the Billboard at the same time. And she won a most prominent, quote unquote, award she won was a Grammy. But her music is very much storytelling. She's a prolific writer. She writes her own music, and it is really relational based. And her relationships have been all over the media. Her first prominent relationship that was focused in the media was with a rapper named Big Sean. And when they broke up, she got with another rapper named Mac Miller. And it was a tumultuous relationship. It was very codependent. This was at the height of her talking about how she struggled with anxiety and depression. So she broke this relationship off because he was abusing drugs and alcohol. And a week later, he got a DUI. And so his fans got on the internet, as they do, and they blamed her for this. And she stood up for herself. And she was like, no, I'm not a mom. I'm not any man's mom. I don't have to take care of him. You can't put this on me. And she really used her voice to, state that. She ended up getting in a relationship with Pete Davidson, and this was a theme for her, was very much going relationship to relationship, which is a very Libra moon kind of dynamic. But she got with Pete Davidson and they got engaged. It was a very prominent relationship in the media as well. And Mac Miller ended up passing away of a drug overdose. And so she called off her engagement to Pete Davidson because she has been very vocal. It was one of the hardest things she ever experienced, and even talked about how she wasn't really over Mac Miller at the time. And, she apologized to Pete Davidson for this and ended up writing a whole album about this. She stayed single for a couple of years after that relationship. And then she ended up meeting, what was his name? Dalton Gomez, who was like a real estate developer, and they were married for 3 years, and she called it off. And then she got into a relationship with Ethan Slater, her co-host on Wicked. And that has been in the news. There's been a lot of hearsay about how that relationship occurred. But again, the other thing about her is she does have a strong sense of justice. She is a staunch advocate for women's rights. She's a feminist. She identifies as a feminist. She speaks up for the LGBTQ community. Her brother, who she's extremely close with, Frankie Grande, is a queer person, and she has a huge queer following because of how she connects with that audience and how she has been an advocate for them. And again, you can hear it in all of her music. She puts it out there for sure. There's a lot of honesty within her music, even her own faults, I would say, quote unquote, faults. Um, she's written about her exes, and she even writes about her own values in that scene within that song, God is a Woman. So that's the background that I have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know what that stands out straight away for me? You talk about because we spoke before we started recording about how she advocates for what she believes in. That Moon and Libra ninth house, right?
Yeah.
What natural law beliefs. And that's literally what stood out when you mentioned that earlier. And that ruler being that Venus in Taurus in the fourth house is like this. She's petite, right? She's quite petite, if I'm not
Tiny.
mistaken. But there's a powerhouse of belief within of what is right and what is wrong. And like you mentioned, she's not shied away from doing that. And essentially, when you look at her birth chart, I'm going to go straight to that Mars in the eighth house in Virgo, to skip step signature for her, right? Coming into this lifetime. And that ruler of that is that Mercury in Cancer in the seventh house. So again, Libra archetype. Kind of like being a voice for, she has a platform to be a voice of others that aren't able to speak, from that kind of perspective. So here's a soul that is not going to shy away from what she believes in. And like you mentioned about her relationships, when, the media and journalists start saying, oh, you caused so-and-so's death and whatever, it's not the truth. So she's not going to hide behind that. She's going to voice her truth. and be like, no, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. And we spoke about it earlier, that anger energy that can link to that Libra archetype, but it's taking action. It's taking action on what is right. It's not just anger because she's angry with what people have written. It's the truth. And it's assertive action rather than reactive action, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what stands out for me in her birth chart from what you've exactly what you've just described about her life.
Yeah, I would have to agree with what you're saying. I do want to mention because I think it's very important and I think that we can draw upon this in her chart. The one thing I
Mhm.
forgot to mention is that um she has gone through a lot of crisis relationally, whether that be her one-on-one partnerships within her family or even with her fans. And the most big thing that I can say is that there was a bombing that occurred in Manchester at one of her concerts.
Mm.
And that was extremely traumatizing for her. And she was very vocal about it. But her whole thing was her and Miley Cyrus and a couple of other people got together pretty soon after that, within a matter of like a month, because they wanted to empower
Yeah.
the 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 people who had experienced the trauma with her, and there were lives lost, and she got back up on stage at that same venue and sang with other artists because she wanted people to not feel like they were forgotten. She wanted them to know, like, this is, I'm here with you and I'm not going to just turn a blind eye. This happened. She felt responsible a bit. I see that with the Pluto in the 10th house as well. But you can see her moon, Jupiter in that ninth house. It's squaring her sun in the sixth house. And, she has Mars and Virgo, and then that Neptune, Uranus, and Capricorn. So these cardinal energies playing out with the Pisces Virgo axis, there's been a lot of crisis for her in order for her to, I feel, understand her own personal truth is what it's really getting her to do, is the difference between what people say about her and what she takes in and their projections or their expectations, um, and really finessing out the actual truth that resonates with her and her own values. That's seen with that Venus as well, ruling that. And I feel like, crisis is the MO for her for this with those signatures I picked out. And I definitely, I didn't want to forget about that Manchester bombing because that was a prolific one for her. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I had forgotten about that one. Thank you for mentioning that. So yeah,
yeah.
totally agree with you.
Gosh, Jordan, you just nailed it with the crisis piece because I mean, she's just a massive kind of icon. She's got the South Node in the fifth, and Gemini's is not the first time she's been on a big stage, and her ability to bring people together. The ruler of that South Node in the fifth is Mercury in Cancer in the seventh, trining Pluto in the 10th. There's a lot of big responsibility that she has. She's definitely a messenger for the underdog, right? So that Mercury rules Mars and Virgo in the eighth, and that opposes Saturn and Pisces. A really tight opposition there. So there's all the death in her life around her. So, huge responsibility around her voice and not just being famous, but what she's saying to balance the scales on the planet, like between gender. Uh, Also, with South Node of Mars conjunct her Jupiter, her instinct is always to be honest. I mean, just her reflexes are to be honest and to really go to war for it in a way, um, like kill him with kindness on some level, but also always speaking the truth. Like she just shows up in such a beautiful way. I think she just disarms people with her gift. And Lilith is in Libra, also. So there's this multiple signature of Libra. It's not just the moon. She's got the ruler of the South Node in a Libra house. She has Lilith, her original feminine design, in Libra, and South Node of Mars in Libra with Jupiter. So by the way, going back to the crisis piece with the Mars in the 8th in Virgo, I mean, that is such an ability to let people know, I get you, I feel you, I know exactly how you're feeling. And even having someone in her family driving a big part of her following. But the opposition to Saturn in Pisces is that Saturn rules her whole chart. It rules her whole chart, and it rules her Neptune in Capricorn, which is in the 12th with Uranus. So all the people who feel victimized by this patriarchal consensus reality, by, sorry, Joe, the white man, but it's like our audience is probably everybody but that. Anybody who feels different, everybody who feels judged, everybody who feels victimized. I mean, that's a huge part of our population, a huge part of our population. And so, yeah, I love that you brought up the crisis piece. It's, I think, also contributes to her following because people feel like she's speaking to me when she sings, and they witness her own personal life falling apart in places, her experiencing loss, her experiencing heartache, even her experiencing that love that she can't let go of, right? It's
Yes.
all there. I mean, it's a really incredible chart. Yeah, that reflects everything about who she is.
Yes. Her chart to me is one of the more literal charts, I feel
Very
like.
literal.
Yeah. David, do you have anything you want to add, or Joe? No?
I've got a quick quote I wanted to add because I was looking at Ariana Grande quotes. I love quotes. In
Mhm.
Jordan, you know that. And one that I feel that fits with her Libra moon is when you feel your best, everybody else can feel it too. So you talk about that projection piece that's coming out, and she is amazing. She's a beautiful woman. And that energy, she exudes that energy as well.
She is. I will say the other thing that's I've seen, she's one of those ones, I think because I have a kid who kind of grew up watching her from the beginning and then getting into the music. So of course, dinner time happens and we're cooking and we're listening to Ariana Grande, right? And then, a breakup happens in the family and one of us play Ariana Grande, or a happy thing happens, we play Ariana Grande, right? But we've seen her evolution, or I feel like I really have, because of my child's being, really enjoying her. And what I've seen, and I feel like this is very much her Pluto placement right now, and it opposes her Venus, the ruler of her moon, her Lilith, her south node of Mars, and her Jupiter, is when Wicked came out and they were doing what is it, where they do all the press, right? Her and Cynthia, and I can't ever say her name, Enviro or whatever. This was the first time that I really saw Ariana Grande not feeling like she had to be something else. She let her love for another woman be exuded and was very open and honest about how much she enjoyed her friendship and how much she does enjoy her friendship with Cynthia. And Cynthia would say very, very amazing things about her as well. So there was this emotional maturation piece, and you could feel that Ariana was actually feeling more secure within herself as well, through watching these. But I also think that this is really a great demonstration of her moon. Cynthia Enviro was asked one time, you guys both have powerful voices. They sang live. That whole movie was done live. It was shot live. They didn't do voiceovers or anything. Like even when they were flying around on the trapeze, like, for the movie, they were singing, belting it out together, and they did it together. And they would be asked these questions about how did you do this? And Cynthia was like, the reason why me and Ariana work really well together is because Ariana doesn't try to overpower my voice. A lot of times when you work with someone else, they will try to sing over you. They want to be the best one. They want to be the this, the that, the standout. And she said that that's not what happened. And they had equality and meeting each other with their talents. I mean, to me, that's so like the moon squaring that, the sun, and the sun rules her Chiron in the seventh. And I just thought it was a really great demonstration of the feedback, which is such a Libra thing that she got through her friendship with another woman. And it felt very authentic, ninth house, and very like girl power, like through and through when they would talk about each other. You could feel the love that they had. And I feel like that's something that Ariana has spoken out about, that it's always focused on her relationships with men, but not her friendships with women. And we really got to see that, and we got to hear about it in a way that really exemplified that Libra moon. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
if we don't have anything else to say, we can go to Nikola Tesla.
Mhm.
We good? Okay. Sue? Uh-oh. Um, so Rob, you're gonna give us background on Nikola.
Yeah. So the research that I did do, so Nikola Tesla was a Serbian inventor, and he was born into a family. So this is a bit of background to give you context into this birth chart. So he was born into an Orthodox family, and his father was a priest, and his father wanted him to join the priesthood. But Nikola Tesla had other ideas. He was more interested in the sciences. So he would go on to study the sciences. He was educated in Germany and Austria. And after completing his education and gaining his degree, he moved to Hungary, where he created some innovations. And he's been attributed with creating some of the following inventions. So the development of the radio, we've got the Tesla coil, the remote control, and fluorescent and neon lighting being a few amongst a lot of other things. And it was during his Saturn return, around the age of 28 or 29, that he actually went to America. And he actually wrote a letter to Thomas Edison because he wanted to work with him, because Thomas Edison was also an inventor, but somebody who had a lot of money, was able to work with inventions, etc. And it happened that Thomas Edison met him and they decided to work together. And so they had a relationship of creating innovations together. But after a while, they had a bit of a falling out. And so their partnership ended. And that also resulted in Nikola Tesla not being able to put money into his ideas and to basically spend time creating more ideas. And he ended up becoming a consultant. So he consulted with other businesses at that time to be able to basically make ends meet, to be able to survive. And he would go on to actually receive funding a few years later for his Tesla electric light company, and where he successfully created ideas to do with lighting and improving lighting at that time. And he then would go on to also set up a new company called the Tesla Electric Company. And he wanted to again explore different innovations and different ideas. And what happened was that he wanted to build a global wireless communication system that would help share energy with people and provide free energy throughout the world. And he created ideas and built a transmission tower, which still exists to this day in Long Island, New York. But unfortunately, it was half finished because funding dried up. His investors lost faith in him. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to finish that. And he actually would then go on just to do a few ideas, innovations here or there. And he ended up dying in America, desolate. And he died I believe they found his body in a New York hotel room. And he died at the age of 86. So that's just a bit of background in terms of who this individual was. And if we just look at his life today, we know he's impacted us to this day, and his ideas continue to do that. Think about the remote control. We have smartphones, which was essentially ideas that he had coined back in the day. It's just that he didn't have the money to patent these ideas. So other inventors managed to patent them. And yeah, so if we just dive into his chart, guys, straight away that Libra moon in the sixth house, for me, here is a soul who wants to be of service for others and is very much about people and wanting to give to people, sharing, care, and inclusion. And I know we didn't mention it, but I feel he's the first stage spiritual evolutionary state. And so this is a soul that was, very humble. There's humility within him. And in a way, he kind of has probably had those eyes that other people around him would be also full of humility, just like him. And what's ended up happening is throughout his life, he's encountered individuals that were um, powerful, that were able to kind of meet him on his level of consciousness, no, like I haven't looked at Thomas Edison's birth chart or anything, but somebody that stepped away and took his ideas on as his own. And he's an individual who couldn't really do anything about it. That Moon conjunct Mars in the South Node in Libra tells me that he's experienced this in a previous incarnation. We pick up from where we left off. And his whole desire was to be of service to the greater good. And it has been done. His ideas, we're working with them today. But during his lifetime, he wasn't able to experience that. Yeah, so that's what I placed with his Libra moon, guys. Yeah, if anybody else wants to, yeah.
I have something I want to add to
Yeah.
this. I think that this is fascinating. Sorry, I've got a little baby on me. I think that this is fascinating. Especially in regard to his evolutionary state and everything, I think that this is both of the charts are great because both of these are souls at very different evolutionary stages, but who are both learning how to come into balance through crisis. And whenever I think of his evolutionary stage, yes, he was kind of a savant. He came from a family that was inventors, and his mom really nurtured that within him.
Mhm.
But he talked about how his inventions came to him. And he said whenever he was 5, there's so many signatures of this in his chart, by the way, that I'll point out. When he was 5, he saw his brother get killed on a freak horseback riding accident. And that after he witnessed that he had flashes of light and visions and images in his head that sometimes made it hard for him to understand whether it was reality or his imagination. And as he got older, he started to embrace this, but he said that that's when this first started happening, was through that crisis and that traumatizing experience of watching his brother pass away in front of his eyes, get killed. And he said that as he got older, what he ended up doing is he would hone into that, and he felt a very spiritual connection with his brother and, you know, the things that are unseen. And he said that every invention he ever made, he made it in his imagination first and would put all the pieces together, and he felt like something else was helping him to do it. And then whenever he would actually try to put it in reality, like in the physical world, that it would always work because he saw it in his imagination first with help. And so when you look at his chart, his Libra moon conjunct Mars, conjunct that South Node in the sixth house, relationships with crisis, that is squaring everything in his third house, the sibling.
Mm.
It's in conjunct his Neptune and Pisces retrograde in the 11th house, his imagination, higher intelligence, and that Neptune is also square to his Mercury and Gemini. So you can see how that even played out in his life, how that was something that was a relive experience that kind of blew him wide open. And
Mm.
he had a lot of humility. And then, as you said, he had a lot of it wasn't just Edison. It was I forget the guy with the last name. It starts with a G, I don't Gasto. He ended up, stealing money from him after he said he would pay
Mm.
for it as well. So he would come into a lot of money and he would lose a lot of money. And that's that in conjunct between Uranus and Taurus and the South Node, and it's ruled by his Venus. So the extreme of that, having a lot of money, being very humble and just using it to help other people, and then going away. And he actually did die of starvation because he was in that hotel and he was living off of milk and crackers, what he was feeding the birds. And that's even a signature in his chart with that
But that
jigsaw
crises,
stuff.
that Libra energy, if we look at it, I've just noticed it now as well, it's intercepted, right? So that
Hmm.
sixth house is ruled by that Virgo. So that moon is ruled by that Virgo. So
Yeah.
yeah, I completely agree with the whole crises, but it's like the soul needed those crises to evolve him forward as well. And
Yes.
then that choice point comes in terms of how you deal with it, because there was something he actually said, which I found a little bit, I was a bit like, oh, that's a little bit sad. It was a quote where he said, in his life, it's never bothered him that people stole his ideas. That's not an issue for him. It was more the fact that people couldn't see how he wanted to help others. I'm paraphrasing, but it was sort of like that's what upset him more. That the fact that his service and if there was any money that he needed, it was to help others, not himself.
Yep.
Which is that, you talk about that humility deep within us, ingrained within this soul's being.
Absolutely. It's
Apparently,
almost
those
like a
were
big
like
Capricornian test. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes.
Sorry.
they were. I was just looking back at something I saw that because it reminded me those were very much like the last words that it said that he said, and it was to his mother, and it says, "My years of service to mankind have brought me nothing but insult and humiliation."
Yeah.
Yeah. But he also has that Neptune and Pisces and Jupiter and the North Node and that 12th house and a really strong, prominent Uranus. And so everything that he's done has taken on a life of his own, of its own, I feel like. And it makes you wonder, he lived a life of having to stay in humility, and now there's a huge acclaim. And I wonder if he would even care about it now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
why
Exactly.
Yeah.
when I
The
look at
quote.
his chart, I'm like, I don't even think he would care about that. Like, he would just be like, I'm glad it's helping people, being
Yeah.
of service and sharing that. That's that Libra in the sixth. So,
Exactly. It
Yeah.
doesn't say whether the quote was from a place of bitterness or just
Yes.
objectivity,
yeah,
which is
Yeah.
thinking about the way he engaged with life around him, as we're told, as it's reported to us, and history is written by those who survive or those who rise above the others. Um,
Mhm.
I just,
Yeah. Do you know an interesting thing I found whilst we talk about him like today is, that I think Uranus is right now. Is it at 23 degrees Taurus or
It
24
is.
degrees? It's
I
literally,
noticed
it's
that.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's having his Uranus, he's had his Uranus return, and in Taurus, we're talking about Libra archetype. It's just like Venus in the third house in Cancer. We're talking about Nikola Tesla, so he never envisioned that, so many years down the line, people would be mentioning him. He'd be such a renowned figure in
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
What strikes me in what you guys are saying too, in terms of that South Node Mars Libra in the sixth, and it's making a wide square to that Mercury in the third house. Well, and he's got drawn to that Cancer Cancer energy and as well in terms of what you were sharing about a family. And I mean, it was a situation where others just wouldn't invest in him relative to his evolutionary state because it was something that was meant to be outside of its time. Sometimes a challenge can be, especially in that evolutionary state, is that it comes after the fact or that it comes after a progressive time. Time, it's
Oh,
like you
wow.
put it out there and then over time it gets picked up. And in this case, he did not adjust himself. I mean, he could have. What strikes me is on the flip side, seeing the Libra to get that money or to be invested in or to be accepted, he could have restarted an old pattern brought forward from the past, but he really did not adjust himself for those purposes. He, wanted to serve in the ways that he emotionally felt were most right, as you guys were sharing. And what came from that, or what he was saying, that didn't bring me, I'm eating what I'm giving the birds here. But what strikes me is that he did not adjust himself for that, and that um, even though he could have been invested in seeing that Libra energy, others may have said, yeah, if you do this or that, sure. But he decided to start a new cycle in terms of staying true to what felt right inside, seeing that North Node in Aries too, listening to himself and coming with that what did, which is, very sad to hear. But gosh, he just, brought that forward from the past in terms of not wanting to bring that forwards and really staying true to the way that he wanted to serve, in contrast to what would bring him approval or others perhaps investing in him. And he didn't change himself for that. That's what strikes me about that.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's, to me, that's why I think that this is, I mean, so that moon, that Mars, and that South Node square his midheaven. And there is a square to his Saturn as well, that midheaven ruler. And to me, I think this was a lifetime of him. I think something happens in that first stage of spiritual, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like oftentimes within this stage, you are, there is the isolation because people don't understand you, a lot of times. And also, there's a lot of Capricornian test that you get in that stage of being self-determined to, because you're trying to move towards source. You're trying to eliminate and like slough off, purge all of those old desires. And I get this sense that this was a lifetime of him not only just being in service, sticking to the truth and what nurtured him while also trying to help others. But it was these Capricornian tests to not get, it's like he was wanting to wrap up, you know, people, they would give him an immense amount of money, or they would entice him with money at different times while doing the complete opposite. And I feel like it was that test for him of, I'm not going to make this about money. I'm going to make this about service and about what I'm the inner calling of what I'm being drawn to do that's for humanity, you know? So, and I think that kind of goes into what you're talking about, David. Do you feel like that would be accurate?
From what I understand, especially in that third stage individuated, it's that it's meant to help the consensus evolve over time. And the challenge can be the rejection, where not having received the first time, you'd sometimes have to go through 30, 40 rejections before it's over time accepted in the mainstream. And right, so that's right. What popped out as me is just what you're saying, that the pressure put on him, from external, also seeing that square to Saturn, if you make it like this, then yeah, and him go deciding, as you were saying, that isolation, or saying that's okay because I don't want to make it that. I want to make it about what I know can help. So yeah, that's right. And that can also be that challenge of that third stage, the third stage individuated, is that it's something that most often it's not accepted. It's something that's so far out the mainstream and often challenges what's been accepted that it's a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
And there's like that faith element, seeing that North Node in Aries in the 12th of what can be. And it's almost like saying, just to make a joke, you know, I mean, gosh, just so sorry to hear about that ending there, but it's like saying, just to make a joke, like, you know, if the tomatoes need to be flung, or if I need to go into that dunking booth, or how many times I get that rejection note, that's okay, you know, because uh, gosh, you know, it just seems like you really had that Mars on the South Node sticking with it. Also that
Yeah.
North, and you can write me that rejection. I don't care how many times that I'm still, you know, got my feet in here.
Yeah. I definitely think that that's that Neptune sextile his Uranus in the first house too. Like I can be alone if I need to, if
Yeah.
necessary. I can be that group of one. And I do feel like he's riding on that cusp though of like the first stage spiritual as well. It's like he's trying to wrap something up too, you know?
Got it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that
I
makes
agree,
sense.
Jordan.
What you're saying, from what I've learned, that makes sense. Like opening more up to that spiritual connection through culmination or through wrapping up those loose ends.
Yeah. And just having to have that self-determination to be like, okay, like in in trusting yourself that you know that that's being guided by something bigger and it's not about the admiration. It's like just trying
Yeah.
to, you know, and wrapping up relational things for him. I have to imagine, and I this is me speculating here, but from everything I read about his brother, he never came out and said this because I don't think that there was language for him to verbalize this. But from what I have deduced and then seeing his chart is him and his brother were extremely close, and there could have been a dependence upon each other. And I feel like that traumatizing experience, um, you know, it's just reflected in this chart that that's the thing that I almost feel like um through that crisis, he learned how to be by himself so he could do this. So he could Uranus in the first house and Taurus, sextile Neptune and Pisces retrograde in the 11th, blaze his own trail, be that group of one, be able to be by himself, you know, to rely on himself and to use those inner resources and his intelligence that was connecting to something larger through that experience to put it forward to start that, you know, or wrap it up, I would say. So yeah.
Yeah. He's an interesting character.
Yes. Um, okay, you guys, I don't mean to be rude, but I have to go pick up my children. I'm gonna let Brav, I'll let you take it over and yes.
Yeah, sure. So we're right. So now we're going to move on to an animal friend that connects us to the Libra archetype. And Stacie is going to tell us a little bit more about these cute little creatures.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I thought for Libra, this would be an incredible animal to focus on. It's called the Mariki monkey, and they are, or otherwise known as the woolly spider monkey. Um, they're actually related to both the woolly monkey and the spider monkey, but they are their own genus. And there's two species of Marikis. There's the northern and the southern. Both are critically endangered. They live in the southeastern parts of Brazil in the Atlantic forest. But I felt like this species is so good to focus on for Libra because they have these unique egalitarian societies where there is no relationship ranking. They are equal in terms of gender. They're just pure equality. Um, And let me get my thoughts together here. Um, and but so yeah, so what they do is they live in troops, and the females will kind of separate during the day and do their foraging, and then they'll all come back together. But what they're like especially known for is their tendency for hugging. That's the way that they form social bonds. They're not like a lot of other or primate species where there's a lot of grooming. They literally do the hugging instead. um so sometimes, like, so violence is very, very rare within the Mariki societies, but they will have spats. And when they do have some kind of misunderstanding or standoff, they always feel the need to resolve it with a hug. It's so sweet. Like in the morning, they'll all get together and form this cluster of hugging monkeys. uh, so um so they're just very peaceful, very tolerant. They live amongst the howler monkeys in that forest, and I don't know if you know anything about howler monkeys, but they have a thing where they will all get together and do their crazy howling. It's very noise intrusive, but the Marikis just, when that's going on, I was watching a documentary and these howlers started doing their thing, and I thought, oh no, it's gonna really make everyone anxious. And it showed the Marikis, and they were just kind of like, oh, the howlers are doing their thing, and just no anxiety, just complete acceptance for, all the other creatures, and no upset. Um, but they're very cooperative. They help each other in every way. Sometimes the mothers will take turns, or they'll swap. They'll look after each other's young and sometimes even nurse. So very cooperative in that way. And their their breeding situation is also quite unique because um, females will breed with pretty much every male in the troop. And there is absolutely no breeding aggression at all when a female is fertile and ready. The males will simply wait for their little turn, and so evolutionarily speaking, it kind of gives the females a good chance for fertilization. But having it be this way, it creates paternal confusion. So it's unknown which offspring are linked to any particular male, and it's thought that that's one of the main factors in what keeps them so peaceful. Um, their anatomy, they've got really long legs, really long arms, and they have this what they call a prehensile tail. And what that means is it's an appendage that can grip. And so just the very nature of how they live and how they move about the jungle, it just suggested to me this like cardinal air, inner side of Libra, outer side of Libra, because the primary method of travel is called brachiation, which is in simple terms swinging from branch to branch. But it's just a unique movement because here you have one arm going to the left, one to the right, left, right, equal sequence, alternation. It just reflected Libra. And throughout everything, they have to have a really strong sense of equilibrium where they're constantly shifting their inner centeredness, their inner balance to move with the trees and to just be so fluid. Um, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm sick. Um, la 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 la. Did I want to say? Oh, and one thing that I thought was really cute about these guys, like the little monkeys, the younger juvenile monkeys will play, and it's simply hilarious to watch them because they kind of roughhouse in the trees, And they have this game that's kind of was likened to pull the tail off the tree. And so like what they'll do is they'll sort of target a particular monkey who's hanging by its tail, and then they'll all do their best to like remove the tail from the branch, and then they'll just boom, they'll just drop, X amount of feet until they can catch a branch. But they're totally at home with it. And it really spoke to me how that inner and outer side of Libra is integrated, because they wouldn't be able to do that if they didn't have that strong inner stabilization capacity. And yet they can just move with all of the shifts between polarity left to right, just very fluid. But yeah, I think the thing that really inspired me about the species is their peaceful natures. They are, like I said before, they're critically endangered. I think the northern Marikis are down to 700. And unfortunately, with those dwindling numbers, they suffer from genetic, there isn't a lot of genetic diversity, and so they can be subject to diseases and different things. And part of a big factor in their population challenges is habitat loss. The Atlantic forest that they live in, it's literally just patches, and the communities that exist, they basically live on private lands. There's someone there in Brazil, I'm sorry I don't have the name, but they basically just valued nature so much that they keep their land specifically for the forest to remain, while the rest of it just gets torn down. It's sad, but it's good for that person for making that available, because there's something like 9% of the world's plants in that forest. It's incredibly biodiverse. And by the way, the Marikis play such an important role in keeping the forest self-sustaining, because they're vegetarian and they're seed eaters, fruit eaters. And so they when they defecate, it's like literally seed bombs. They'll just drop it down, and there's all kinds of seeds in their fecal matter. And some researchers have said that seeds that are kind of embedded in this Mariki feces germinate faster than other seeds. So they really, really play an important part in kind of being the gardeners of the forest. But one point I really wanted to make is that with their dwindling numbers, because both species are critically endangered, in spite of the stress on resources and loss of habitat, they have managed to keep their egalitarian ways in place. You think about the human species, and we can get a little crazy when we start losing resources and have to compete. And sometimes self-serving things come to the forefront, and we stop forgetting about inclusion and sharing and working together. And so, due to the fact that the Marikis still have this has been preserved, I felt like it was a really important, it's a really important teaching example for us, that even though when things get hard, and the key is just really listening to each other, helping each other, being able to understand each other's needs, and considering each other as equals. It's so important, because we are intrinsically equal. Ranking is a man-made phenomena. It's It's not timeless. And so, yeah, that's why I thought the Marikis would be good to reflect on today.
Brilliant, Stacey. I absolutely agree with you, and it's beautiful how you put that. That whole sharing, equality that they embody in terms of sharing, caring, inclusion, which is very much Libra Moon archetype, and yeah, something I guess humans could learn from, right? In terms of these animal friends of ours that live on this
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's so important. I mean, we depend on that for our own survival.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Stacey. Beautiful. On that note, before we close, I just thought of a beautiful quote that we can close upon in today's Libra Moon show. A quote that embodies the Libra Moon is, "Do unto others as you would have done
Mm.
unto yourself." Yeah. So on that note, thank you for listening, and yeah, we'll be back with another Moon show pretty soon, I'm sure. So, thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.